Imagine you're 60 years old with $2 million in your portfolio. You're probably starting to wonder when you can retire, and more specifically, how much you might be able to spend when you do. That's the exact situation today's couple finds themselves in. John and Sarah have spent their whole lives working and saving and investing, preparing for retirement, but they're just now getting to that point where they're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And they're asking themselves, based on everything we've worked for, everything we've saved, all we have in investments, what can this actually do for us in retirement? So today we're going to go through John and Sarah's situation to unpack all the ambiguities of retirement planning and show exactly what's possible with this type of retirement portfolio. Let's jump right in. Here's John and here's Sarah, and as I mentioned, they're both 6 years old today. Here's an overview of their portfolio. They have some money in the bank, but most importantly, we want to look at what assets they have that will create income for them when they actually retire. So they have John's 401k and John's Roth IRA. They have Sarah's Roth IRA and her current 403b, and then they have a joint investment account. Their home is worth just under $1.5 million, and they recently paid it off. So as we look at their total net worth is about $3.5 million, of which $2 million is in their investment portfolio. We started talking to John and Sarah about what their goals are. What do you want this to look like? They want to retire at the age of 65. Now, when asked why, they didn't really have a great idea other than they thought that that's when they were supposed to retire. That's when they're eligible for Medicare, of course, and it just seemed like a nice round number. So more to come on that later as we actually define a more intentional retirement goal, but for now they said 65 is what they wanted to do. We started talking then about how much they wanted to spend each month in retirement. They thought that about $7,500 per month would allow them to live pretty comfortably in retirement. So they no longer have a mortgage. They do have property taxes, which we're going to account for separately, but these are what we might call their core living expenses. Groceries, entertainment, food, utilities, those types of things are included in their core retirement expenses. Beyond that, I knew that John and Sarah really wanted to travel. So I started asking them about their travel goals. Now, this was one of those areas where they almost felt timid to fully express what they wanted to spend on retirement travel. They had big dreams. They had a lot of things they wanted to do, but they had no idea what their retirement portfolio could actually do for them. They had no idea what a realistic number to start with was. So they put $10,000 out there as a starting point, but that was very much an answer they were given because I think they were a little bit afraid to actually express what they wanted to spend on travel. So that's an area we're going to come back to, but they shared that if they had $10,000 per month, that would at least allow them to do some of the bare minimum things that they wanted to do in retirement. Next is healthcare. So if they were to retire before Medicare age, they would have to pay about $1,000 per month each to maintain their current coverage through COBRA. But if they're going to work past Medicare or 65 and beyond, at that point, they would pay for their Medicare Part B and Part D premiums, which would be based upon their adjusted gross income at that time. And then we're estimating an additional $4,500 per year out of pocket for each of them. So $12,000 per year, $1,000 per month pre-Medicare if they were need to get health insurance because they retired before 65, and then $4,500 per year of out-of-pocket expenses in addition to their Part B and Part D premiums after Medicare has started. Now, we also talked about cars. They actually really like cars. John's a big car guy, so we talked about this, and again, a little afraid to dream big because he didn't know what their portfolio could support. Now, $40,000 is a very nice car that you could get with that, but keep in mind that John's a car guy, loves cars. That's something that really lights him up, and so we wanted to show what could they possibly spend on cars. But to start, we're illustrating them purchasing a new car for $40,000 in 2030, and once again in 2040, and then at that point, not purchasing any more cars for the rest of their retirement. So these are their goals. Now, their income, John makes about $180,000 per year today, and Sarah makes $105,000 per year. Income in retirement, John will have his Social Security benefit at age 70 is what we determined would make most sense. He'll collect about $4,200 per month from that. And then because John is collecting to age 70, that freed Sarah up to collect a bit earlier because they would have his benefit locked in, even as a survivor benefit if he predeceased Sarah. And Sarah will collect her benefit of $2,400 per month at her full retirement age of 67. So those are the retirement income sources. And then Sarah also has a pension of $800 per month, or $9,600 per year, that she will start receiving at age 65. So those are income sources there. Between now and retirement, both of them are putting 10% of their paychecks into their 401k and 403b plans, and both of them are receiving a 5% match. So 15% total of their income is going to retirement savings. Now, this is where we wanted to tie it all together. At this point, John and Sarah are starting to feel a little bit more organized. They have their various accounts. They have different income sources in retirement. They're so head down focused on saving and working and saving. This was step one of saying, let's just get organized. Step two is now to say, can this wealth we have, can these investments we have support the desired goals that we have, which once again are $7,500 per month of core living expenses, plus additional expenses for things like healthcare, property taxes, new car, and travel. So let's tie all this together here by going to the retirement cash flows pages. So here's our cash flow page in retirement. And what we're going to be looking at is year by year, what income sources do they have coming in? And then compare that to what are their total expenses? And ultimately, what role does their portfolio play in their ability to create this income? So if we start with income, we can see that right now, of course, they have their salaries. They have those salaries, and those salaries are going to last until the age of 65. And at that point, salary goes away, but income can't fully go away. We simply need to replace it with other sources. One of those sources will be Social Security. And as we can see here, Sarah will have her Social Security benefit, but it does not start until age 67. So there's going to be a couple years of a gap there. And then John will have his Social Security benefit starting at age 70. So here's our total Social Security benefit here, and you can see how that starts in 2032 at their age 67, and it bumps up pretty significantly once John turns age 70. That's one income source. Another income source is Sarah's pension. She'll receive $800 per month starting at 65. She will receive a cost of living adjustment on that, so you see that increasing over time. And the column that we want to focus on here is what will their total income flows be? So between salary for the first few years, and then pension and Sarah's Social Security, and then pension and John's Social Security and Sarah's Social Security, you can see how their income is going to ebb and flow throughout retirement. So that's the first column. The second column is looking at their expenses, and I'm going to fast forward to their first year of retirement. Their living expenses here, this is that $7,500 per month that we talked about. $7,500 per month today is $90,000 per year, but we need to adjust that for inflation because the cost of everything 5 years from today is going to be more than the cost of everything today. So here's the numbers we're actually planning for John and Sarah all the way throughout retirement, and you can see those numbers continue to grow over time. But that's just their core living expenses. Beyond that, they're going to have additional living expenses, things like property taxes. So the mortgage is paid off, but they still have property taxes that are increasing over time. Things like healthcare expenses. So their healthcare expenses are covered today through their employer, but once they turn 65, you can see what that healthcare cost will cost for each of them, whether it's Part B premiums and Part D premiums, plus the out-of-pocket expenses that we're looking at, and we're looking at that for John and Sarah, so you can see the total amount that we're budgeted in for healthcare for each of them. So after looking at their basic expenses here, of their core living expenses plus housing plus healthcare, now we have to take a look at their goals. Their goals are that car purchase, once in 2030, as we talked about, and one time in 2040, 10 years later, and then nothing after that. But they also have vacation. This travel goal is something that they don't think they're going to spend forever, but they said, what if we could do this from age 65 to age 75? Once again, I think they'd really like to spend more than that and have that travel goal extended, but this is what they're starting with because they didn't quite yet know what was possible. So that's what we're looking at here. And then finally, there's a tax payment. The taxes is what amount of taxes might they owe on whatever portfolio withdrawals they have to make in order to net an amount to travel, to purchase these cars, to pay for basic living expenses, healthcare, property taxes, so on and so forth. And in this column is their total outflows, their total expenses. One thing you'll notice is the tax payment starts fairly low, maybe surprisingly low. That's because they're primarily living on their brokerage account. But once they're required to start taking distributions from their IRA, you can see that tax payment jumps up significantly. This is the year in which required minimum distributions start, so one of the planning points, of course, is to address that. But going back to this and going back to what's the first thing we need to understand? The first thing we need to understand is what's the difference between their total income, their total non-portfolio income, I should say, which is in this column here, and their total outflows, so the total expenses in this column here. That gives us net flows. This is showing what amount does their portfolio need to support to be able to supplement their pension, to be able to supplement Social Security and allow them to meet all of these expenses that we're looking at here. So as we look at this, one of the interesting things to note, and this is actually quite common, is this number is not going to stay consistent over time. This first year of retirement, this is a pretty significant withdrawal rate that they're having to take. Reason for that is that's 1 year in which they're going to purchase a car. So that's a one-time bigger expense, which means a one-time bigger draw from their portfolio. In addition to that, they don't have a very high non-portfolio income base at that point. They have Sarah's pension, but that doesn't go super far in terms of their ability to cover all of their expenses. As other income sources kick in, as Sarah's income kicks in here, as John's Social Security income kicks in here, what you can see is the withdrawal rate from their portfolio starts to decline pretty significantly, but it starts much higher. That's where we want to look at their withdrawal rate here to get a high-level understanding of what are they actually projected to pull from their portfolio. When we divide that withdrawal dollar amount by their total portfolio value each year, we can get an understanding of how much are they actually taking out. First year retirement, they're projected to take out 5.7%. The next year that drops to 4.4. Then that drops to the low 3 range, and then that even drops to the 1.5% range once John's Social Security kicks in. The reason for this jump here isn't because they're starting to spend a lot more. This is simply because they turn 75 and they're required to start taking money from their portfolio. Now, they could turn around and reinvest that if they wanted to, but they're going to be required to at least take it out of their IRA and their 401k in order to pay taxes, and then they can do what they want with the rest. So why are we even looking at this? What do these numbers tell us about John and Sarah's plan? What these numbers are telling us is whether or not their withdrawal rate is sustainable. In other words, can they continue to spend these amounts, or at some point are they going to be at risk of spending through their entire portfolio? Well, if we look at just the first year, that 5.7%, that's probably on the upper end of what you could expect to spend on a more sustainable rate and expect that money to last for some period of time. But I'm not very worried about that at all, because what you can see is their withdrawal rate is continuing to go down over the course of their retirement and only even jumps up because of required withdrawals, which, as I mentioned, if they really wanted to, they could turn around and reinvest. So if we start looking at everything here, we could say, John and Sarah, this is a projection of what your portfolio is expected to look like. By the way, we're assuming about a 6.5% annualized growth rate throughout their retirement, so from age 65 and beyond. That's in no way a guarantee that they're going to get it, but it's just saying we need to assume something to model out what we think this might look like for you. So what's going to happen is here you are today with your $2 million. You're projected to retire at 65, and based upon your savings rate and some growth, you're projected to have about $3 million in your portfolio at that point. Even though at that time, you're no longer saving to your portfolio and you're actually drawing down your portfolio is expected to continue growing because the amount that you're taking out is less than the portfolio growth that you're getting on average year by year. So John and Sarah, not only are you retired and taking money from your portfolio, but that portfolio, as you can see here, continues growing and growing and growing. Now, what we're looking at here, of course, is portfolio growth projected over the course of decades. You're not going to wake up the first day of retirement and have your $3 million portfolio turn into $8 million. But if the spending that we're projecting is what you actually spend in retirement, your $3 million very well could turn to over $8 million over the course of retirement. And by the way, that's not even including any equity that you have in your home, which today is worth just under $1.5 million. So as we look at this, this was step one for John and Sarah to say, let's get organized. Let's put all your pieces together. Pension, Social Security, investments you have today, investments you're going to continue to make over the next 5 years, assumed withdrawal rates. When we put all of that together, what does this look like? The goal of this wasn't to say, here's your plan, go off and enjoy. The goal of this is to say, what can we now optimize? And sometimes we look at this and the things that we need to optimize are financial related. We need to save more. We need a better Social Security strategy. We need to come in here and make some changes to your tax strategy to save you even more. And those are all good things to do. But the first thing was to say, how can we better align this plan with what you want to do? For example, do you really want to work until age 65, John and Sarah? Or is that simply something you thought you should do? As I mentioned before, that was simply something they thought they should do. So just for fun, let's see what would happen if you didn't work until age 65 and instead we showed you retiring at the age of 62. So still 2 more years of work, but age 62 to 65, those might be your healthiest years. That's going to be the youngest you're ever going to be in your retirement. What would happen if we retired 3 years earlier and you started taking some more of those trips sooner? You started doing more of what you wanted to do sooner. It leads to less money by the time that you're 90, but if we look at your probability of success, you're still very likely to be on track for this happening. And the goal of this isn't to optimize for how much we die with at the end of our retirement. If that was the case, we just work forever and never stop saving. So what's that right balance of how long should we work to be prepared for what's to come, but not work so long that we miss some of the best years of our life? So we looked at this, we explored this, and we said, look, this is definitely an option. Now let's go back to the base case. Going back to what if you did work until 65? If you are going to work until 65, and by the way, John and Sarah didn't hate what they were doing for work. They enjoyed the people they worked with. They enjoyed the type of work that they got to do. But what I did tell them is I said, if you're going to work until 65, we need to make sure that you're enjoying what you've saved for. We don't want to get to the end of our retirement and realize that we have $8.3 million worth of experiences that we said no to because we weren't spending the right amount along the way. So what would this look like if we took your monthly spend? And what if I just arbitrarily added $2,500 per month? Instead of $7,500 per month, you're now at $10,000. That's an additional $30,000 per year to do whatever you want with. And the impact of that is, yes, fewer dollars at the end of the day, but you're still very much in a good position to make this work. So that was another option. And that was more just to show them how much can we think about spending? At what point do we need to get nervous about you spending too much? And it's probably not 10,000. It's not even 11,000, but maybe closer to 12 to 13,000 per month. At that point, in running the numbers with them, we might start thinking that that's the upper limit of what you might be able to do. So just having that information was very reassuring to John and Sarah as we were going through this. Here's the fun part. I mentioned John's a car guy. John loves cars and Sarah loves cars too, just maybe not to the same extent as John. I asked, what would it cost to buy your dream car? And he thought about it, and he thought about the base model. He thought about maybe the different packages he added on. And he said, James, you know what? If I had $125,000, I could get the car that I've always dreamed of. I said, let's look at this. What if we made no adjustments? You're still just taking the same trips. You're still working until 65. You're still spending the $7,500 per month. If you made that single change and we refreshed your plan here, there's fewer dollars left at the end of the day, but it makes barely a dent in your ability to accomplish your plan. Now, what if not only do you purchase those cars, but what if we took your travel goal? $10,000 per month is what they started with, but again, that's because they didn't know what was possible. Now that they see what's possible, they said, well, what if we increase that? What if that's $40,000 per year? That's probably more in line with what we would love to be able to do in retirement. So we reran their plan, and what we started to see is we could start to customize something that worked for them. Now, by the way, if you see this and you think that you want to model your own plan out, you can get access to the same software using the Retirement Planning Academy link in the description below. But as we started to do this for John and for Sarah, what we could really start to do is customize a plan for them. Don't just work until 65 because you're supposed to. Don't limit your travel spending because you don't know how much you're able to spend. Don't just buy the car that you think you can afford. Start with an understanding of what do you want retirement to look like? What does success look like? Then model out what you're currently on track for. Then you can start to work backwards to say, as we can start to toggle different things on and off. Is it more important to us to retire early, to spend more on things like travel or car purchases, to give more, whatever the case might be? Once you have that plan in place, you go from this sense of we've been saving and grinding and putting money away to now we can start to understand, what can this money do for us? What can the success we've had? What can the savings we've had? What can that mean for us on the other side of retirement? And really, once you've done this, this becomes the foundation, because now from here, John and Sarah can say, what's the best way to invest our portfolio to support this income? How do we now optimize taxes, knowing what different income sources are going to look like to ensure we're minimizing our lifetime tax liability? How do we make sure that we have the right estate planning provisions, the right insurances in place to protect everything we've worked so hard for? But this is the foundation, aligning your goals and what you want retirement to look like with your planning to ensure that you're able to do everything you want to do. Root Financial has not provided any compensation for and does not influence the content of any testimonials and endorsements shown. Any testimonials and endorsements shown have been invited, have been shared with each individual's permission, and are not necessarily representative of the experience of other clients. To our knowledge, no other conflicts of interest exist regarding these testimonials and endorsements. Once again, I'm James Knoll, founder of Root Financial, and if you're interested in seeing how we help our clients at Root Financial get the most out of life with their money, be sure to visit us at www.rootfinancialpartners.com.